Ladies and gentlemen, it's over. Not a rumor, not a theory, not a developing story. This is the moment the deep state got buried, and they got buried on camera on the world stage by three of the most unlikely warriors working in complete lockstep. President Donald J. Trump, Senator Marco Rubio, and of course, the new director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Game freaking over. Now, here's a twist. It didn't end with an arrest. It didn't end with a classified leak. It ended with truth, intel, and a world audience that saw through every lie in real time. Trump just pulled off the most brilliant NATO power play in modern history, and Rubio torched the leaders trying to undermine the U.S. from within, and Tulsi Gabbard, well, she just confirmed the kill shot publicly. And CNN, they panicked, they lied, and they got caught. But I'm going to show you exactly how. But that's not even the biggest part, because what just happened, it obliterated not just Iran's nuclear program, but the entire credibility structure of the deep states that they've been hiding behind for over a decade. Now, stick with me, guys, because just in the next few minutes, we're going to hear what President Trump told the world about NATO, how Tulsi Gabbard exposed this multi-agency cover-up, and why Rubio's warning to leaders might have been the final nail in the coffin. Now, this is not a policy shift. This is a political funeral. And by the end of today's video, you're going to understand exactly why today will be remembered as the day that the American people finally took the wheel back. So let's go ahead and break this down, right? Let's be very clear about what just happened. On June 25th, 2025, President Donald J. Trump didn't just show up at the NATO summit. He rewrote the rules. Now, for years, U.S. presidents begged NATO to pay more. They negotiated, they made deals, they compromised, and they got played. President Trump, he walked into that summit, looked them all in the eyes and said, "Match our commitment or we walk." And what happened next? Every NATO country except one folded. They signed on the new benchmark, 5% of their GDP committed to defense spending. Now think about that. Not some 2%, not a delayed promise, oh, we'll get back to you, not a handshake photo op, 5%. This wasn't just a win for America. This was a geopolitical earthquake. They're calling it the Hague Defense Commitment. They named it after the summit in The Hague. Make no mistake, guys. This is the Trump Doctrine in action. This is how you end global freeloading, guys. This is how you break the deep state's multinational alliance racket, right? And this is how you reposition America as the standard, not the sucker. So here's the kicker. The one country that refused, Spain. Why? Because their far left government's just too broke trying to fund socialist handouts to even pretend to defend their own borders. No surprise, right? But President Trump did not blink. He said, look, they want a free ride? Fine. We'll make them pay double through trade. That's strategy. That's leverage. That is a president who negotiates like a CEO, not a politician. And here's what the legacy media will never tell you. This single move just bankrupted 40 years of deep state international influence, because for decades, NATO's been a money laundering black hole for globalists, think tanks, defense contractors, and intelligence bureaucrats who profited from America's overcommitment. And now the entire scam is over. President Trump just took the checkbook away, and the story doesn't end at NATO, because while President Trump was outmaneuvering the suits, Tulsi Gabbard, she was over there pulling the curtain back on probably one of the biggest intel deceptions in years. And once she spoke, there was no more hiding. Now, I want to talk about the moment that the deep state officially lost control of the narrative. Now, for days, CNN, MSNBC, their anonymous sources and whatnot, they were running wild, claiming President Trump's airstrikes on Iran's nuclear sites, they were a failure. They cited a so-called leak BDA, a battle damage assessment, suggesting the Fordow site was mostly intact. So they used this tiny snippet, a few sentences from a classified report out of context, to tell the world Trump missed his target. But they lied. They knew they were lying, and they did it anyway. Why? Because the truth was inconvenient. Because admitting that President Trump had pulled off a surgical demolition of Iran's nuclear capability without a single U.S. casualty would destroy their decade-long propaganda. So they said what they felt like they needed to say to, save face, if you will. But then Tulsi Gabbard walked in the room. Now serving as Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard did not speculate. She didn't hint. She posted the receipts. She confirmed officially, publicly, and without spin that Iran's 3 most advanced nuclear facilities were destroyed beyond use. Fordow, destroyed. Natanz, destroyed. Esfahan, destroyed. And here's the most important part. Rebuilding will take years, not months. Think about that, right? We're not talking about a minor setback here. The operations back up next week. No, we're talking about total operational reset for Iran's nuke program. 0 enrichment, 0 output, 0 threat. Now, thanks to Tulsi Gabbard, it's not just Trump saying it. It's not just Israel saying it. It's the United States intelligence community going on record and saying, look, CNN lied, the deep state covered it, and now it's all out in the open. Tulsi's statement was more than just an intel drop. It was a shot across the bow of every agency, outlet, and official who tries to spin this into another orange man bad narrative, okay? Because Gabbard didn't just confirm the destruction. She confirmed that the media used a compromised leak to intentionally mislead the American people. That wasn't journalism. That was sabotage. And if you're wondering who else had something to say about the sabotage, Senator Marco Rubio, yes, that Marco Rubio, just stood on live television and torched the traitors behind this leak. Now, I want to ask you, are you tired of being rushed off the phone or sold something you don't need? That's not chapter. Catherine Garcia, she said this. They were wonderful, very caring, compassionate, and helpful. I actually talked to a real person. Everything is paid for. I owe nothing. Darlene Walraven, she added, chapter is saving me $200 a year and lowered everything. So when's the last time someone truly took the time to help you with Medicare? Like when? Give our friends a chapter call right now. Phone number is 909-563-8279. Or better yet, hit them up on their website at askchapter.org/Ron. Look at the link in the pinned comment or in the description down below. Check them out. They're real people. You can get real answers and real savings. So now let's talk about what happened when Senator Marco Rubio stepped into the fight. Because while Trump dismantled NATO's grift and Tulsi Gabbard burned the deep state's cover story to ash, Marco Rubio, he stepped up and he called out the cowards who tried to stab America in the back. He didn't just criticize them. He didn't just say, he didn't just condemn the leak with soft DC language like a pansy. He torched them on live TV. Marco Rubio, he stood in front of the nation. He called these deep state insiders what they really are. They're professional stabbers, not whistleblowers, not patriots, stabbers. People who masquerade as analysts, insiders, or intel experts, but they're really just political operatives in bureaucratic clothing. People who care more about headlines on CNN than national security. So Marco Rubio, he made it very clear. These leakers didn't accidentally release incomplete information. They intentionally cherry-picked language from a confidential early-stage battle damage assessment BDA report, knowing full well it lacked final verification. And why? So CNN could air it, so MSNBC could amp it up, so Twitter could trend it, so that the world would believe the lie that Trump had failed. That's why they did it. Rubio called it out for what it was, a coordinated disinformation campaign originating not even from Iran, not from China, but from inside the US government. Oh, and it didn't even stop with leaking. These insiders, they used anonymous channels to feed legacy media the exact narrative they needed at the exact moment that they needed it. So this was all carefully timed, guys, because President Trump had just delivered a surgical, casualty-free strike that took down 3 of Iran's most protected nuclear sites. And instead of reporting the truth, these people rushed over to CNN with the smear. Rubio, he said it best. He said, these people don't want America to win unless it's on their terms. And when Trump scores a victory, they treat it like a crisis. That's not politics. This is sabotage. That's the definition of a deep state, a shadow system within government, loyal not to the Constitution, not to the commander-in-chief, but to themselves and their own ideology. Now, Rubio, he put them on notice. And this time, it wasn't a soundbite because with Trump back in office, Tulsi Gabbard running intelligence, and Marco Rubio exposing the rot, the deep state just lost its ability to hide in the dark. So I want to zoom in and zero in really on CNN because this wasn't just an off day for them. This was an institutional faceplant. So let me just walk you through how this collapsed in real time. First, the setup, right? CNN airs a breaking report citing an anonymous source, a supposed insider at the DIA claiming the U.S. strikes on Iran didn't destroy Fordow. That one sentence, plucked from a preliminary, unconfirmed early stage analysis, becomes the lead story across every CNN segment. They bring on analysts. They bring host panels. They talk about limited damage and questionable success and Trump's reckless escalation. They position themselves as the adult in the room, calmly correcting the commander-in-chief. They don't care that it's based on some partial data. They don't care about the fact that the assessment was never meant for public consumption. They don't even bother waiting for confirmation, because the goal was not to inform. The goal was to humiliate. The goal was to frame Trump's success as a failure before it could even be verified. And it worked for about 36 hours. And then all of a sudden, the collapse. The truth came out, and it came out fast. Isn't that funny about the truth? You know, it's kind of like turning on the light. It doesn't matter how dark the room is. You can have the smallest candle. It'll light up the room, right? So first, satellite photos showed extensive structural damage at Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Then the IAEA, a global nuclear watchdog, said clearly, these sites are non-operational. The damage is extensive. Centrifuge halls have been neutralized. Then came the official statement from DNI Tulsi Gabbard confirming the rebuilding would take years and that CNN's reportings were based on incorrect and incomplete information. And then all of a sudden, finally, CNN's own footage. That's right. CNN themselves aired before and after satellite imagery showing that the entrances of Fordow were completely caved in, the internal structures destroyed, and the bunkers rendered unusable. They didn't just lie. They lied while literally showing you the truth on the screen. And when the facts overtook the fiction, did CNN apologize? Did CNN retract? Did they confront the anonymous source that burned them? No. They pivoted. They started saying, well, yes, okay, damage was done. But can we really say that it's destroyed forever? Iran might rebuild. This could still escalate. Basically anything to avoid them admitting that they had been caught red-handed lying to the American people about the success of their own country's military operation. But here's the difference in 2025, right? They're not getting away with it anymore, because now we have a president who calls them out live in front of the world, an intel director who publishes the receipts, Tulsi Gabbard, a senator who names the leakers and essentially declares war on corruption, right? CNN wanted to spin the story, failed. Instead, they spun themselves into a public credibility collapse and ended up being dizzy. This wasn't just another media blunder. This was the moment that the mainstream narrative shattered and everybody saw it. But it gets even worse for them, because in the middle of their own meltdown, CNN tried to go head to head with President Trump on live TV at the NATO summit. And what happened next? Well, let's just say that the president made them wish that they had stayed home. So let's rewind back to June 25th inside the NATO summit press room, packed with cameras, reporters, world leaders, and essentially every globalist diplomat who'd spent the last decade mocking Trump. Well, CNN had one shot, one last attempt to try to claw back their narrative. They stood up, smug, armed with a question designed to attempt to undermine President Trump's credibility, to challenge his intelligence briefings, and to paint him as inconsistent. So, Mr. President, you cited Israel intelligence. Earlier, you said U.S. intelligence was inconclusive. Are you relying on Israeli intelligence instead of American sources? Now, pause right there, guys. This wasn't just a question. This was a trap designed to imply that President Trump was making it up or that he didn't trust his own intel team. But instead of walking into a trap, Trump delivered one of the most strategic, composed, and lethal rebuttals of his presidency. He calmly walked them and the entire room through the timeline. He explained that the early reports, yes, were inconclusive. He explained that the preliminary documents said the damage could be limited or very severe. He emphasized that he waited, collected additional intelligence, spoke with people on the ground, and confirmed it before making a statement. And then he hit him with this. He said, and I quote, "The site is obliterated. We think everything nuclear is down there." Okay? They didn't take that part out, did they? Boom, guys. Boom. In one moment, President Trump exposed just how CNN weaponized ambiguity to lie to the public. He showed strategic patience, not political theater, and he proved once again that he thinks in terms of facts, not feelings. But did he stop there? Nah, he took another question. This time it was about sanctions and oil. So the reporter tried to twist it into Trump softening on Iran, right? President Trump didn't even blink. He said, look, I'm not giving up. I could stop them. I don't want to destroy them. They need money to rebuild. They will sell oil. And he also went so far as to say, but they're not getting nukes. Now, once again, President Trump measured, strategic, people first mentality, right? He's not there to posture. He is there to win peace without war. And he's doing it. Like, he's there to destroy regimes, not countries. He's there to lead, not perform for some applause. And the world saw it. So in that moment, CNN didn't just lose the exchange. They lost the illusion that they were even capable of the truth. Because this wasn't just Trump ranting. This was commander-in-chief mode, and it was undeniable. He brought receipts. He brought restraint. He brought results. And as CNN sat there, cameras rolling, faces blank, narrative shattered, that was the moment that the media knew they were fighting. They weren't just fighting against Trump anymore. They were fighting the truth. And right behind that podium, the deep state felt the walls closing in on them. Because what died that day wasn't just a media movement. This was a narrative that had controlled American policy for like 20 years. So let's take a step back for a second. Let's zoom out. For over a decade, the deep state pushed one core myth, just one, that the Iran nuclear threat could be managed through appeasement, money, and weak agreements. They called it diplomacy. We now know it was really just deliberate deception. The Obama-Biden-Iran deal gave billions of dollars in relief with zero enforcement. It gave cover to Iran's underground program, and worst of all, it gave the American people this false sense of safety while enemies plotted in silence. Trump didn't buy it. Tulsi Gabbard knew better. Marco Rubio, he had seen it from the inside. And so now the entire house of cards has collapsed because the nuclear sites are gone. The deal's defenders are exposed. The media mouthpieces are discredited, and the internal leakers have been dragged into the light and may even be facing some criminal charges. We're going to follow up on that in future videos. But this is not a political cycle. This is a turning point in American history. For the first time since 9/11, we are seeing a complete decapitation of the corrupt national security narrative. The deep state's Iran legacy is now just a pile of rubble under the desert sand. And who made it happen? A president who said enough is enough. An intel director who chose transparency over bureaucracy. A senator who stood up and said traitors don't get a pass. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't luck. This was a coordinated, strategic, patriotic takedown of a system that thought it would last forever. So here's the part that the media never covers. While the globalist elites gasp at Tulsi Gabbard's NATO demands, while CNN spiraled trying to protect the Iran deal for whatever reason, while deep state operatives were scrambling to leak and lie, President Trump never lost focus on the one thing that mattered the most, the American people. So in the middle of all of this high-stakes NATO press conference stuff, while being bombarded with hostile media, President Trump paused the entire room and said this. He said, look, you should really see how great our soldiers and warriors are. He didn't say it to score points. He didn't say it to virtue signal. He said it because it was true and because the world was ignoring it. He reminded the press corps and by extension, the entire global audience that behind every headline, every summit, and every operation, there are men and women in uniform who carry the real weight. And he made it clear this mission wasn't about conquest. It wasn't about political victory. It was about neutralizing threats without sacrificing lives. And that's what makes this entire operation different. Because the deep state's way, endless war, endless deployment, endless bureaucracy, endless pouring trillions of dollars into these things, will manage Iran, will contain North Korea, will respond if we must. Trump's way, destroy the threat, avoid the war, bring our people home. Pretty simple. Way less expensive and a whole lot faster. This is not just smart foreign policy. That's moral leadership. And he's saving a lot of lives. He's proved that you could strike with precision, lead with strength, and still value life over optics. It's not just about battlefield wins. It's about rebuilding trust. And in this moment, guys, President Trump didn't just win a policy fight. Okay. He reminded America what it feels like to have a president who actually gives a damn. And that trust, it's growing because President Trump's not doing it alone. Now, let's talk about this power trio that just flipped the system on its head, okay? So this is what really terrifies the establishment the most. Not just that Trump is back, not just that he's delivering, not just that the polls are shifting and the media is crumbling, as we've reported numerous times. No, what really terrifies them is that he's no longer fighting this battle by itself. He's now got two battle-tested warriors standing shoulder to shoulder with him. On the one side, you got Marco Rubio, the senator who's seen how the machine works and how, and has now committed to blowing this thing wide open. But he's also got Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, the former Democrat, soldier, truth teller, and now director of national intelligence, the one person they never thought would join the fight. This is no longer a one-man crusade. This is a strategic alliance. Each of them is playing a role. Trump, the commander, the vision, the negotiation, the force of will that refuses to back down, the one who walks with NATO and rewrites the rules. Tulsi Gabbard, the truth teller, the soldier with integrity, now in charge of the nation's intelligence. She confirms what others are too scared to admit. She brings receipts instead of rhetoric. Marco Rubio, the enforcer, the one on the inside calling out the traitors who manipulate intelligence and sabotage American wins. He speaks the truth even when it burns the people he used to defend. Together, they don't just counter the narrative, they bury it. They don't just fight back, they expose the rot and they replace it with clarity. So for the first time in decades, we are watching a coalition that operates on truth, not agendas, action, not symbolism, and America first, not globalist appeasement. And that, ladies and gentlemen, leads us to the final shift, because when the president of the United States can walk into NATO, strike down a nuclear threat, expose a media smear, and unify real leaders in the process, the game's not just over, it's reset. So let's zoom all the way out and look at what really changed here, guys. Right? Because when President Trump, Marco Rubio, and Tulsi Gabbard stood up, when the intel leaks collapsed, when CNN face planted on live television, and when NATO countries lined up behind the US for the first time in decades, this wasn't just a week of good headlines. That was a seismic shift in global power. We are watching in real time the crumbling of the old guard, the very institutions that thought that they could outlast every administration, the think tanks, the career intelligence manipulators, the legacy media machines, the international alliances built to bleed America slowly while pretending it's for peace. All of it's breaking down because for the first time in our lifetimes, you've got, America's not just leading, it's dictating the terms. NATO's not freeloading. They're falling in line. The deep state isn't managing narratives, they're running for cover. And the media is not just asking tough questions, they're issuing quiet corrections, hoping you didn't notice. So this is not how the story was supposed to go for them. Trump was supposed to be gone. Tulsi Gabbard was supposed to stay silent. Marco Rubio was supposed to stay inside the fence, right? But something snapped. Something changed. And now the movement that they feared, the truth that they suppressed, is finally standing over their broken fortress and turning out the lights. The deep state didn't just lose this round. They lost the war for the narrative. And that's something that no election, no funding, no headline can ever reverse. So I'm going to end with this, guys. This is getting long. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't an accident. This was a turning point because on June 25th, 2025, President Donald J. Trump, he walked into a NATO summit and he rewrote the global order. Tulsi Gabbard dropped the irrefutable proof that the media did lie and the strike succeeded. Marco Rubio stood in the halls of Congress and said, and called the deep state what it really is: a network of professional traitors hiding behind classified ink. They didn't just expose corruption, they buried it on camera in front of the world. And you're watching this right now. You're not just a witness to it. You are part of the generation that watched the deep state fall. No more endless war, no more intelligence games, no more anonymous sources say, right? No more media spin crap. This is a new era led by truth, empowered by courage, and unapologetically American. And if this is what they accomplished in 1 week, imagine what comes next. Ladies and gentlemen, the deep state had their run, but now the lights are off, the doors closed, and the game is over. Like, share, subscribe, because history is being written and you're not just watching it. Ladies and gentlemen, you are a part of it. I'll see you next time.